Thank you. Thank you. New Democrats, friends, thank you very much for joining me here tonight. It's an honor for me to spend some time with you. Tom, I want to thank you very much for that great introduction. Our party and our province is very proud of you. It is truly inspiring to witness the hard work and enthusiasm of young men and women who are getting ready for the future and building the foundation for a good life here in Nova Scotia. But you know what really excites me about what Tom had to say? I think it tells the story of Nova Scotia turning the corner. Turning the corner on decades of Canada's worst economic performance, of looking elsewhere for opportunity and prosperity, of being defeated by challenges and the inequities we face, and instead of overcoming them. The future that Tom is building is very different. It is marked by confidence, by opportunity for those who have not had it, and by prosperity that is shared more widely and more deeply than we have ever seen it. I want to talk to you a little bit this evening about that. But first, I'd like you to think back to where we started, to remember back to 2009, when we set out what we set out to accomplish as New Democrats heading into that election, when the full force of the Great Recession began to hit our province. Life was getting harder for families, and under the former government, out of touch and out of ideas, things were only getting worse. They couldn't keep emergency rooms open, their renewable energy plans had stalled, business investment was drying up, and there hadn't been a major new construction project in nearly 20 years. All this in spite of the fact that Rodney MacDonald's government enjoyed hundreds of millions of dollars in offshore revenues that today are all but gone. Did you know that in 2008, 2009, the government of Nova Scotia collected $452 million in offshore royalties? Now I want you to guess what that amount was this year. This year it was $28 million. So what was the former government doing with all that money? Were they keeping emergency rooms open? No. Were they improving care for seniors? No. Investing in companies to create jobs in hard-hit rural communities? No. Making life more affordable for families? No. They didn't even keep their promise to take the HST off of home energy. The former government was spending money on things like kiddie ATVs and adding $1 billion to the debt through March Madness. Last-minute, unplanned spending. And let's not forget, the Conservatives governed with the enthusiastic support of the Liberals. The result was widely viewed as a do-nothing government trying to please everyone, but failing to move Nova Scotia forward. Nova Scotians were ready for a change. As New Democrats, we set out to take some of the common sense steps to make life better for families. To be sure, we knew that the 2009 election would take place in tough times. And that's why, through extensive party discussion, we limited our platform to 50 commitments that we knew would make a difference, and that we knew we could keep. My friends, New Democrats have made it our mission to keep those commitments. Every platform commitment is being kept. Let me say that again, because I want to be sure that it sinks in. We are keeping every single commitment that we made in the last election. And that alone is something that sets the NDP government apart from any government led by the other parties. In a province that has had 250 years of Liberal and Conservative governments, you could be forgiven for thinking that the mere act of keeping your promise is a major step forward in itself. But friends, I want you to think about the conditions in which our government has done that. Our party came to power in the middle of one of the world's worst economic downturns. And things were getting worse. An independent review of the provincial finances found that Nova Scotia was not keeping up with the bill to pay for the vital services that families count on, like health care, education, roads. The province was on track to a $1.4 billion deficit. A panel of economic advisors said that Nova Scotia needed more revenue, they needed less spending, and they needed better economic growth to get themselves out of that hole. In fact, when we first started on this journey, I worried that the only goal that we would accomplish in 4 years was to bring the budget back into balance, which would have been something in and of itself. But I knew that our true bottom line was making life better for Nova Scotia families. So, as New Democrats, we faced up to that $1.4 billion challenge. And I want to give credit to the individual party members and supporters, the new and re-elected MLAs, the brand new cabinet ministers, people who saw what had to be done. And they saw that a $1.4 billion budget gap could only be conquered if the whole province worked together. If we worked together on the challenge, if we worked together on the solution. The NDP undertook the largest and widest ever budget consultations in Nova Scotia history. The gap is closing, and if the lords of the world economy are willing, Nova Scotia will be back in balance next year. This will be thanks to the wisdom of many thousands of Nova Scotians. And friends, under the NDP, Nova Scotia is closing the deficit gap while putting the priorities of families first. Not for us, the temporary budget relief, long-term pain of wage freezes and wage rollbacks or schemes, I don't know if you remember this one or not, schemes like paying nurses to leave their jobs. The NDP targeted school board administration and duplication to better focus on better reading and math and extra teachers where they're needed in order to keep classes smaller. The NDP is streamlining healthcare administration at a rapid rate to better focus on fair drug prices, health prevention, better patient care. The NDP is steadily increasing the efficiency of civil service spending while providing job security and opening up jobs where most Nova Scotians actually live, which is outside of Halifax. Friends, New Democrats do things differently. Now, Saskatchewan, where our party was first formed and first formed government, is the birthplace of Medicare. Just this summer, the Premier of Saskatchewan was here, turning to Nova Scotia to learn how to keep emergency rooms open, providing better care sooner through collaborative emergency centers. And I thought to myself how proud Tommy Douglas would be. New Democrats know that the measure of a society is how it treats its most vulnerable citizens. And even in the toughest of times, the NDP is investing each and every year to help more Nova Scotians break out of the cycle of poverty. It doesn't make the news. Lord knows that good news doesn't make the news. And yet, support for the vulnerable is the most significant new spending in our historic first term. That includes the new caregiver's benefit, the new affordable living credit, new opportunities for people on income assistance to start working and to actually save some money, new needs-based student assistance, and Nova Scotia's first strategy to address domestic violence. But the number one commitment of the Nova Scotia NDP in our platform was to create the secure jobs that Nova Scotia's economy needs. Now, I take that commitment very seriously. And yet, in a world where climate change is so rapid that the Arctic ice cap is actually disappearing, where Europe, the US, and Asia have had major economic problems, and where Canada's finances are worse than expected. In this kind of world, in a small province sticking out into the harsh North Atlantic, just how much can we actually do about the economy? Well, not much if you listen to some folks. I mean, I hear that if an enterprise or a business is in trouble, government should just stand out of the way and let it go bankrupt, no matter how important it is to our economy. I hear that government shouldn't partner with profitable corporations. I hear that it's not government's job to attract large employers with hundreds of employees. You may have heard those comments too, and you may think that I am reflecting on the current House of Assembly, but I'm not. Those comments were made by a guy named Mitt Romney. Have you ever heard of him? Better yet, do you think you'll ever hear about him again? Yeah. Here in Nova Scotia, the opposition parties have apparently adopted Mitt Romney as their chief economic advisor. When Mitt Romney said, "Let Detroit go bankrupt," America said he was wrong. But the Nova Scotia opposition were listening. And when Barack Obama saved 1 million jobs that depend on the auto industry, Americans said it was the right thing to do. But by then, the Nova Scotia opposition weren't paying attention. The forest sector in Nova Scotia is like the auto sector in the United States. It is a pillar of our economy. It is the livelihood for thousands of families. This cuts very close to home for me. And I know, and the people back home in Queens County know, that the province can only support an industry if it has a viable future. And I want you to know that it was a tough day for me when I had to stand up in front of the people I grew up with, whose families and mine had known each other for generations, and tell them that there was nothing more I could do. And it was a tough day when negotiators walked away from the talks with the prospective buyers at the Port Hawkesbury Mill because they could not meet Nova Scotia's bottom line. There was no deal for thousands of families in the Strait area, no deal for dozens of businesses, large and small, that depend on the economic foundation provided by North America's biggest and most modern super-calendared paper machine. It was a very tough day. But I represent all Nova Scotians. It's my responsibility and that of my colleagues to make sure that every deal we make is going to earn money for Nova Scotia and for Nova Scotia families. And in Port Hawkesbury's paper's case, it had a happy ending because the new owners came back to the table late that night, and by 3 a.m., they had accepted the key elements of an agreement that would mean that Nova Scotians could earn back every cent that we invested in the mill and more. And I remember that night very well. I remember that I didn't get to bed until after 5 a.m. and that we were back in the office before 9 the next morning for many hours, ironing out the details of the binding written agreement. And for me, that was a great day for Nova Scotians. And now there is an owner in Port Hawkesbury who is committed to operating that modern mill and making money from it so that it can keep operating, keep adding value to our economy. Keep adding value to our economy, keep food on the table, goods in the stores, kids in school. The best news is that those owners are committed to the forest of the future, generating profits needed for reinvestment and developing new products to replace those markets that are shrinking. The opposition leaders have made it clear that great day would never have happened on their watch. In their inexperience, they failed to understand that deal would see the province repaid in its investment in 12 years and earn an additional $150 million in tax revenue. Oh, and by the way, save 1,400 jobs. I was never prouder to be a Nova Scotian than the day that Irving Shipbuilding won the National Shipbuilding Procurement Strategy. I'll get it right, Steve? As the son of a shipbuilder who was a sheet metal worker and who worked at that yard, I was now the head of a government that made the investments in that bid that were needed to ensure that Nova Scotia won. Now, I hear opposition MLAs say that they are appalled that provincial investment made it possible for Irving and Nova Scotia to win. 30 years of shipyard work, thousands of jobs that would not happen here on their watch. Now, friends, that is Romney talk, and New Democrats will never accept that. New Democrats want to keep this province moving forward. As a New Democrat, I share values that I hear from other forward-looking leaders, not just in North America, but around the world. Ed Miliband is the new leader of the Labour Party in Britain, and he says that his goal is a country where everyone has a stake, a country where prosperity is fairly shared, where we have shared destiny, a sense of shared endeavor, and a common life that we lead together. This is just one small province. But even here, I know that we're all in this together. And I am so proud of how much we can accomplish together when Nova Scotians made the right decision, share the endeavor of getting this economy and this province turned in a new direction, forward. Some critics have said that I am obsessed with jobs. Obsessed with jobs. Well, maybe I am. Because jobs mean the dignity of work for people who would otherwise be stuck in the cycle of poverty. Jobs means more and more young people, like Tom, can get good jobs in any part of Nova Scotia. Jobs means communities like Shelburne and Digby no longer have to accept depopulation as their fate. Jobs means that for every Bowater Mersey that has to close, this province is working hard and working successfully to open up twice as many new jobs for the next generation. Jobs means that Mi'kmaq youth, young African Nova Scotians, young people who were convinced, as Tom said, that they had to go elsewhere, can think about training and employment opportunities right here at home where their families are. And we all know that this is a world where companies can choose from among many possible locations. If jobs don't come here, they will go somewhere else, because every other province, every country, every jurisdiction is putting its best foot forward. Today, it may indeed be true that I am obsessed with jobs. But for the first time that I can remember, Nova Scotians are seeing industries move to Nova Scotia, a place where many other companies have put down roots and expanded. Jobs from Alberta, jobs from Ontario, coming to Nova Scotia. And that's what happens when there's a government that is open to new ideas, a government that cares enough about people to look for every opportunity that will earn a solid return for Nova Scotia and for families like yours. An NDP government, this province is at a moment of extraordinary opportunity because this government is not too timid, because this NDP is not hamstrung. I don't know if that's a pun or not, hamstrung. Is not hamstrung by the political baggage of 250 years. And because so many of you are ready to make a better future happen. Past governments often seem to leave the next generation little more than a jump in the provincial debt. I don't know if you know this or not, but the NDP over 4 years will add little, if any, operating deficit to the provincial debt with the budgets that we have written since 2009. But giving the next generation a better opportunity is not just about balancing the books. It is about the most aggressive renewable energy program in North America, dozens of communities, thousands of Nova Scotians participating in the switch to renewables, using energy conservation offers that are transforming the lives of low-income families, partnering in the creation of a secure, long-lasting, low-lifetime source of energy, with which we will transform regional economics. Imagine this. Thanks to the power of the Lower Churchill. It is about taking fundamental decisions rather than avoiding them, like the decision that must soon be made regarding the largest block of privately owned land ever to go on sale, the Bowater Mersey Forest land. The extraordinary opportunity is not just about partnering with some of the biggest companies in the world to ensure that they are part of a growing economy. It is about the fundamental steps that give the people of Nova Scotia greater control over their own destiny, so that Nova Scotians gain fully from the power of our resources, our talent, and our knowledge. There will always be critics. I know that suffering the critics is worthwhile when I hear that there are now 30 building cranes at work right now in Halifax. The building crane had become Nova Scotia's most endangered species. The opposition say that they would get rid of energy conservation policies created by the province-wide environmental movement. Now, I know it's worthwhile to suffer that criticism when I hear the story of Helen Drew. I don't know if you heard this or not. Helen Drew is an 86-year-old resident of Terrence Bay who can now afford to live comfortably in her own home thanks to Efficiency Nova Scotia upgrades. Helen said to the CBC, "It's been wonderful. I can feel secure and stay in my own home." And I know it's worthwhile when I meet the parents of children with autism who now have the help that their children need. And I know it's worthwhile when I meet the community college and university students who will have better programs because of IBM's new Center for Analytics, or the poor seniors who have a little more comfort because the NDP stopped taxing their income. It is worthwhile when I look at today's paper, and read the story of Rob Carter. Rob Carter is an engineer who moved from California to his family's home in Guysborough County, never expecting that he would be hired here to use his great skills as part of the industrial development that is happening in Guysborough through partnership between the province, business, and community. And I know it's worthwhile when I hear that one of the bright spots in Nova Scotia's recent economic performance is the high level of business investment. Investment that means a better deal for all of you and your families. You know, a lot of good common sense Nova Scotians say that a political party can only do so much in its first 3 or 4 years. But thanks to your hard work, the NDP has begun to move Nova Scotia forward again. So what's next? As we think ahead to the next 5 years and the once-in-a-lifetime economic opportunities right in front of us, Nova Scotians need to ask two things. Who will move Nova Scotia forward to seize the new opportunities of the future? And who can they count on to ensure the benefits of prosperity are shared fairly, to make life better for families right across the province? And I believe the answer is crystal clear. The number one priority of the NDP is to make life better for families. Consider a few examples of what we have done together in 3 short years that the other parties, I might add, failed to do in all the decades that they were in power. We're keeping emergency rooms open, something Liberals and Conservatives said couldn't be done. We're improving the standard of living for the poorest Nova Scotians. We have an actual 5-year plan for road improvements, investing in better equipment and training for hundreds of smaller, innovative businesses, forming a regional economic partnership to secure more investment, more jobs, and better training for those new jobs. As Nova Scotia's first NDP government, we've worked hard to make life better for families in very difficult times. And there is a lot that we can be proud of. But make no mistake, there is much more to do. And New Democrats are ready. The next election will decide whether Nova Scotia continues to aim for big economic wins like the shipbuilding contract, or whether this province will turn away from being a partner in success. The next election will decide if the Liberals get to crank up power rates by 30 to 50% by taking on one of Ralph Klein's worst ideas, or if Nova Scotians finish the job of creating a power system without the old risk of rate shocks. The next election will decide if the province keeps focusing on better care sooner by being all about better patient care and health prevention, or if it's back to the chaos of constant reorganization and high overhead from political parties that have no idea about better care. And the next election will decide if Nova Scotians keep ensuring that government lives within its means so that improvements in services are real and sustainable. I know that we have only just begun, but I also know that communities throughout Nova Scotia can learn how to thrive, not merely survive, by becoming part of the new economy. And I know that more and more young people can expect good jobs here in Nova Scotia. The political parties that held Nova Scotia back for so long, that broke promises as readily as they made them, that echo the despairing and disparaging attitude of Mitt Romney, are desperate to turn back the clock because they live in the past. Friends, you and the people like you are the ones who can make sure that Nova Scotians keep moving forward to a better, fairer future. Elections are about political choices. Those choices help shape the future for each person and their family. The choice to go forward or to turn back will be especially important. I want to thank each of you. You have helped us achieve so much so quickly. Knowing that there is so much more to do, I ask you to keep being part of positive change in Nova Scotia, because the future starts here. Thank you.